Sorry. I believe they are 1080 at 24. Welcome to another exciting After Effects lecture with Todd and his class. It's going to be great. Tonight we're going to learn about puppet pinning. So real quick, for those of you who aren't here, here's the assignment. Pause it right now to read it if you want to. Done. Okay, you've paused it. You've read it. Now we're going over here. All right, so I have a composition set up, 1080 at 24, 10-second duration. I'm going to do this right away. Last name, underscore first name, underscore A9 for assignment 9, puppet pin. Boom. And I might as well add main comp to the end of this thing too, because that's what this will be. And I'm going to put a star at the front so it goes to the top of my list. Cool. Puppet pin, main. Excellent. So our composition's set up. So the whole idea of this assignment is you need to find a character and use the puppet pinning tool to make it do stuff. So I'm going to pause this while I find a character, and we're going to find a character together. And then we're going to cut it out and make it happen. Found a little stock image of this little girl with pigtails, and this is kind of a perfect setup for puppet pinning. We can puppet pin her hands, her arms, her neck, her head, her pigtails, and we can do fun stuff and make her move around and dance or whatever we want to do. So I'm going to take this and we're going to save this image. And we're going to go ahead and make a new little folder here on the desktop. Let's go this. Last name, underscore first name, A9, underscore puppet, pin. Go ahead and hit create. And then I'm going to make a new folder called images. And I'm going to save this in here. Doing all right over there, DeAndre?
Not bad.
I'm just going to call this little girl. And I'm going to type in puppet at the end. And it's a JPEG right now, so we obviously need to cut this thing out. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go into Photoshop to knock that out. Let's go into Photoshop.
Will you send this to each of anyone?
Oh, sure. Why don't I do that for you?
Good jump, Scott.
All right, so we'll find the little girl puppet that we're going to use. We'll bring this in, and we'll clean it up and make it something that we can work with. So let's duplicate this just so we have a new version of it. Right away, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this bottom part off. So I'm going to go image, crop, and that's going to cut the bottom part off, which is great. And then I think what I'm going to do is grab the magic wand tool. Yep, I got it set to contiguous, so I'm just going to kind of grab each of these white parts in here. And let's just delete those out. We should be seeing this on alpha. And my guess is I probably got just a tiny little bit of a line around her. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to select, modify, expand. I'm going to go by 1 pixel. That expanded it a little bit. I'm going to hit the delete key again just to clean up the edges if there's any funky edge stuff going on. And then let's go ahead and set it on a white background and see how, or a black or a gray background, and see how this is looking. Make sure that we don't have any funkiness going on. I don't want to use the gradient tool though. I want to use the paint bucket tool. Fine. For what we are doing, this is just fine. We don't have any funky white edges going on. There's a little bit right here and a little bit right here on the sides. We can probably expand this canvas just a little bit. So right now it's 1,000 pixels wide. So let's go 1,001. Let's go 1,020. And then let's set this up another. We'll just set this to 1,000 and click OK. So we got a little bit of a border here that we can kind of work to fill in the edges where things are missing. So I'm going to come in here and kind of clean my puppet up just a little bit and make sure that it actually has, you know, finished edges and whatnot. So I'm going to just use the pen tool and kind of draw in here, and that actually doesn't look any better than what I had before. Let's go grab the pen tool and do it with the pen tool. So I'm just going to kind of make selections out of these, make sure I'm working on the right layer, and then I'm just going to use the ink drop tool and the brush tool to just kind of fill these little spots in. Let's make sure that we actually have, you know, opacity and all that good stuff going on. And I'm going to try not to draw over what's already been filled in. That looks good. This doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. Close is good enough. Just going to smooth these edges out a little bit. That looks great. Come down here to her foot, which is kind of funky looking right now. Almost looks to me like we could probably just take this foot and duplicate it and flip it around and use it. But I'm just gonna do this. I'm just gonna like fake it till you make it type of a deal. Here we go. That's looking pretty good. Let's go over here and fix this one kind of the same way. I'm just gonna come in here and round that off a little bit. That's looking pretty nice. There we go. So our little girl with pigtails is all ready to go almost. I'm gonna go back up here to the top of her head and smooth this out a little bit as well. Peachy. All right, cool. So let's save her as a PNG file. So we'll go File, Save As, Little Girl PSD. If you want to do any additional work, you can save the PSD. I'm not really going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to save this as a PNG file. And click OK. And now I'm going to pause this and send it out to all of you. All right. So we're going to go ahead and import our little girl puppet. And we're going to drop her on our project, and we're going to start working with her. All right. So let's develop some semblance of a plan about what we want to do with our little girl. I think we're just going to make this really simple. Add a little movement to her head, her pigtails, maybe have her dance a little bit, move her hands around, or wave or something like that. But we're going to play around with a bunch of different kind of ideas here on our little girl puppet and see what we can figure out. She's looking a little rough around the edges because I did that selection thing. So when you do cut them out, just give it the time that it needs to cut them out and make them clean. I probably should have like anti-aliased the edges a little bit more with the selection tool, but we have what we have. Okay, so puppet pinning. Let's go ahead and save this too while we're at it. Using proper naming conventions, of course, always. Save it into my folder, and now we can get started with puppet pinning this thing. All right. So it's important to kind of think ahead a little bit about what you want to do with your animation. Like I said, I kind of want to like make her pigtails move around a little bit. And it looks like there'd be some good points for that. Like here and here would be kind of an anchor point where you'd probably want to starch a little bit, use the starch tool, and then maybe grab like, you know, this part of the pigtail over here so that the whole thing kind of moves around whenever she moves. And then, you know, you have some additional options in terms of what all you can do with these pins. I've often said that like less is more with keyframing and things like that. It's kind of the same thing with the puppet pin tool. If you go overboard with 1,000,000 pins, you're gonna like want to shoot yourself because it'll be too much to animate and too much to kind of make work together. So just be kind of selective about what you want to do and kind of set up your character so that you don't have so many things to pin that it drives you bonkers. So I think what I'm going to kind of start with is I'm going to start right in the middle of her head. I kind of want her whole head to be able to move around a little bit. So if I put a pin right there, it's going to create a mesh. And I think right away I'm going to pull the expansion in a little bit. Probably even a little bit more than that. Let's set the expansion to like 5. So the expansion just goes outside of the pinned areas a little bit. And then let's set the density up to like 30. So we have lots of polygons that kind of create our puppet so that whatever we're pinning doesn't break into weird shapes or do anything funky.
We're not getting the same thing you are.
What was that?
I'm not getting the same thing you are. Yeah, the
Like,
grid.
the
You have
grid,
to
yeah.
checkbox the mesh.
You got to make sure that you have your girl selected and you need the pin tool selected, and I believe you also need to be on the mesh. So if you don't see what I see, make sure you have the mesh selected, and then you should be able to see it.
Nope.
No.
Oh, no, checkbox.
The checkbox up here.
Up top.
Oh.
Show mesh.
Oh, I
Yes,
see.
that guy too. Show mesh. Ooh, there's record options now. Speed, smoothing 10, use draft deformation, show mesh. Cool. Okay, neat. All right, so you should see a mesh something like this, and also you want to make sure you're actually on the puppet pin tool. So there's three different versions of the puppet pin tool, right? And they all do different things. So the pin tool itself allows you to place pins and then move and control those pins and make them do whatever you want. So right now I only have one pin, so if I move this pin, it just moves the whole mesh around, right? So I need to have multiple pins in order for that to work. So the pin tool allows you to place pins, and then you can control those pins to create animation. The starch tool allows you to select parts of your model that you want to have hold still or have less movement, and that you can kind of dial that in. So if you want to starch certain areas, you can fully starch them so they will not move at all, or you can kind of like say set it to 75% and it'll only be 75% starched, so it will move less than other areas. So you can create some pretty cool detailed models with these puppets. And then the overlap tool is pretty straightforward. It basically allows you to make certain parts of your model overlap or underlap each other. So like, let's say I had her move her hand around, right? And her hand comes up in front of her face. Well, obviously we don't want her hand to go to behind her head. We want it to be in front of her face. So we can use the overlap tool to set certain sections of the model to be in front of or behind other sections. So like, let's say we wanted her to put her hands behind her back like this. You'd want to make sure that the overlap is set correctly so that they go behind and not in front. And you can animate those things too. So like, let's say you wanted her to put her hands behind her back and then in front. You could use the overlap tool and animate it so that you could have the hands go in front or behind whenever you wanted. All right, so we're gonna kind of set this mesh up with the puppet pin tool first. So I have the puppet pin tool selected. I got her head selected. I'm gonna select her neck down here too. That is gonna allow me to kind of pivot her head on her neck. I'm gonna do a few like pins for shoulders, elbows, and hands too. And we'll see just how crazy we're gonna get with all this fantasticness. Cool. And then I'm gonna do the same thing for the legs down here. Pin there for kind of where her legs would be anchored in, a knee pin, and an ankle pin. And you can see the mesh density kind of changes around these pins, right? Which is good. So now if we like grab her head, you can see her head pivots around that neck pin, which is great. If we wanted to, you can make her yakety schmack. All right. Try not to move your pins around too much right now, because I think we need to go in and we need to start starching some areas to kind of make sure that certain things hold still and don't deform too much. Connor's already having trouble. Oh, Lord have mercy.
Fantastic stretchy. This is just disgusting.
Yeah, so don't go too fast. I might make a kind of a waist pin here too, so I can make her dance or do a hula hoop thing. Okay, so that's the puppet pin tool. Let's go in and start using the starch tool as well. So the starch tool is good. We're going to start laying some starch pins down. And then they totally changed this. Where the heck?
Why can't I get different versions of it? Okay.
It worked out.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I don't want to do that.
Prevent deformation.
To prevent things from moving, right? So like, Huh.
Put them, like,
It's really
like-
interesting the way that they set these up. Like, you used to be able to come in here and, like, set how far out the starching pins worked. I don't even see them in here. Okay, here's our starch pins right here. Interesting.
Hi, friend.
You don't need to be born.
Okay, so I'm going to just lay in a few more starch pins around her head to kind of make sure that when her head moves, it doesn't like completely, totally deform. I'm surprised you can't move them either. That's funky. Okay. Fun. Let's see how this is working now. All right, so you can kind of see what the starch pins are doing, right? Like if I stretch her head up now, these other parts kind of tend to stand a little bit more still. It doesn't deform her entire body. So I think we just kind of need to start laying additional starch pins down so that her head holds still and doesn't deform all over the place. And now when I move this, it should hold pretty still, and it does. That's great. What happens if I move her neck? Ooh, that's fun.
Even though the starch is there, it still looks like it's from Bendy and the ink machine. You turned her into a bobblehead.
Cool, this is good. And then some other places you probably want to try starching things are like on the arms here. So like in the middle of the arms where obviously you'd have bones there, so you don't want them to be curved. So now if I kind of move, yeah, this is funky. This is different than what it was before. You could actually move these around in the past. So let's see, I'm gonna punch in here a little bit so I can get a little more detailed with my starching. And I'm just gonna work to try to starch this stuff so that it doesn't. It still bends like an SOB. It's so weird. That's awesome.
Good job.
Oh, that's great. Fun, 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 fun.
Starch tool is fun.
Right? Super duper fun. Huh. Weird. Hang tight with me for a second. I'm going to kind of find all of my
Well,
puppet starch pins. Starch, starch, starch. Up to 16. I'm going to delete all these. I'm wondering if we need to make a new mesh for this. If I turn that mesh off and I start starching, what happens? I wonder. It just goes right back into mesh 1. All right. Okay. Okay, so let's go in and start playing with the puppet pins. So there's mesh. We got a bunch of starch pins in there too. Work on some additional starch pins. And most of this other stuff looks pretty good. Like, oh, that's kind of fun. It actually makes it look like she's almost dancing or doing a hula hoop too, and the way her hands subtly move is kind of nice.
Go above and beyond. Give her a hula hoop.
Oh yeah.
Now my character looks like they have a wedgie.
Fun. Okay, so now we have our puppet kind of set up. So then let's take a look at the overlap tool. So if I want to... Okay, yep. So this is so weird that they change this. If I click on these things and I say density and expansion, it does the whole doggone mesh. Weird. Okay. Alright, well, we're just going to roll with it. Alright, so if you use the puppet overlap tool, alright, so let's say we want our hand and arm to go behind our head, right? Like, so I'm going to click on the hand and then grab, we've got the hand, and then the other thing you can do is you can see on the mesh right here, it's got an extent option on it. So if you turn the extent up, it will propagate out across the mesh and will allow you to control whether or not it's in front or behind. So I think if we say this is a 75% in front, and then we go back to our pin tool and grab like the hand pin and move this up, you'll see that the hand goes in front of the face, or in front of, come on. No, we're not working, we're working on this pin, right? Here. Oh, that's just gonna drive me bonkers. Alright, I'm gonna reverse course here a little bit. Come on. Take me back. There we go. So if I stretch this hand out a little bit, you can see that it goes in front of the hair. If I wanted to go even further in front of the hair, I could set some pins on the hair and say I want this to be 35% in front.
Oh, the girl disappeared.
It did. That's not good.
Nice.
And now if I go back to the puppet pin tool itself, oh, that's weird. Okay, so the numbers are a little tricky on this puppet pin overlapping tool. Oh, these are set to 75% in front. Okay, great. So this one's set to 35. So let's set all these to 35.
Oh, that's because refresh is disabled. Never mind.
35, 35, and 35. And then go back to my puppet pin tool itself. And we should see our hand is just splitting right in the middle of where we want it to actually be. So let me try this again. I'm going to go in here, click on this guy. Let's extend this a little bit more. Here we go, and we want this to be 75% in front. And if I go back to the puppet pin tool and move this, it should be fully in front of the hair. Finally. Thank you. So that's kind of how the overlap tool works. You just basically set the depth, so, you know, set the depth on whatever part you're trying to have in front of or behind, and then you can move those parts in front of or behind. Okay, so animating.
Like, how do you set it so that way it's farther behind?
So like, we will, okay, so we just set, nope, so these pins on her hair, right? I said I wanted the hand to move in front of the hair, right? So these pins on the hair are set to in front 35%, right? So that means like this is kind of on a scale of 0 to 100. So those 3 pins are set to 35, and then the hand pin is set to 75. So there's some, you know, overlap between those two. And if I move the hand over the hair, you can see that it does indeed go right in front of the hair, which is what we wanted it to do. Yes, sir.
So if you put in 0, it would go back then.
Yes, 0 is back, 100 is front. Cool. Okay. So let's do some animating, shall we? All right, so let's say we want to set this girl up to say like wave at the camera and say hi and then hula hoop, right? So we'll keep it relatively simple. I already kind of have my hand here. We could maybe have her hand start in the back, which would be kind of fun. So have her kind of start with her hands behind her back like so. You can see we've got one hand in front and one hand behind because I have that mesh turned on or set to in front on the hand. So if I set this to back to say 50% in front, my guess is it's going to go behind the hand. Okay, how about 35% in front? Yeah, that's perfect. Let's go back to pin, and it's still in front for whatever reason. Some of this stuff is just so weird the way it works. There's no reason that should be in front. That should be behind.
It's because you didn't set it for the body itself.
Maybe.
So I think it's just 0 for the body.
It's just 0. Alright, well then I'll set some
That might be it.
overlap pins here
Theoretically.
on her body. There we go. And we'll set these to 55% in front. And then go back to the puppet pin tool, and we should be able to bring this back. And it's behind. Now she's literally reaching into her body, grabbing her heart.
I love you.
I'm gonna rip my own heart out.
Kalima.
Brutality.
Let's extend this out a little bit.
Quit talent.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add a couple more of these in here just to make sure that we've got good extension in terms of where the hands are gonna be. And I'm gonna go back to the puppet pin tool and we'll try this one more time. Okay, good. Now her hands are behind her back. Great. All right, so her hands are behind her back. I want to kind of have one of her hands come out and wave hello. And then because somebody said something fun about like, let's go the distance and make her hula hoop, well, then we should bring in some sort of ring. So let's make a hula hoop real quick, like. So the hula hoop I am just gonna make with the ellipse tool. So I'm gonna grab the ellipse tool and then I'm just gonna double click it and it's gonna make, oh, that masked it. We don't wanna mask our puppet. I'm just gonna make a new shape. There we go. So we got a new shape tool. I'm gonna turn the stroke on and the fill off. We're not on our phones, right, DeAndre?
That was the computer.
Okay, good. All right, so stroke is on. I'm gonna change that stroke color to, oh, let's just make it her hair color.
I don't even have Apple.
Hair color is set, and then I'm just gonna like take my hula hoop and kind of like finagle it a little bit so that it looks kind of like a hula hoop. Oh yeah, you're double clicking something that's making it do that. This hula hoop animation is going to be super fun. Make this a little thicker still. Oh yeah, this is going to get really interesting with the hula hoop because we have to have part behind and part in front.
Make it into a 3D space.
That could work.
That's actually a really good idea there, Riley. We'll do that. That is smart.
Good job, bro.
Good job, Riley. All right, so yes, we're gonna make it into 3D space. Good call. Let's see. We'll make our puppet in 3D and our shape layer in 3D, and then we can just go in and we can rotate it on the x-axis. And now we've got part behind and part in front, and we're gonna go ahead and increase the width of our hula hoop quite a bit here, and kind of position and scale this so that it looks like a hula hoop that this little girl would use.
We should probably make it different colors. It doesn't blend into our hair.
I agree. We will do that as well. So we'll go into the stroke and let's just go ahead and make it like pink.
Magenta.
Magenta, copy that. I'm gonna make mine kind of magenta pink. All right, so there we go. We've got a hula hoop now. Her hands are behind her back. We're gonna have the hand come out and wave, and then we're gonna have the other hand come out, and then we're gonna set it up so that she does a little hula hoop for a second. We might need more than 10 seconds for this. By the way, the minimum requirement's 10 seconds. You can go over that if you so desire. So I'm gonna go into my composition settings, and I'm just gonna set this to 30 seconds, just because. Okay, so we got our hula hoop. It's in 3D space. And now what I want to do is start animating my puppet. So we've got the hula hoop. I'm going to go ahead and call this hula hoop. And I'm gonna do the animation on the little girl first before I do the hula hoop. I'm gonna animate the hula hoop afterwards. And we'll set up the animation on the hula hoop to kind of coincide with what she's doing. We might even be able to use the animation from the hips to drive the animation on the hula hoop via an expression or pick whip. So that's something we can keep in mind just as we're moving forward. Okay, so let's go back to our little girl. Let's get our puppet pin out here. And start working with hello. So yep. Okay, great. So as we learned last week, you can go ahead. Let's everybody save real quick. You can puppet pin animate really easily inside of After Effects by just grabbing a yellow pin and then using your mouse to control what the animation looks like over time. And then you can go in and kind of adjust and make changes and smooth things out if you need to afterwards. So let's go ahead and see if we can make this work. All right, so the first thing I want to do is maybe we have, I don't want to have her walk in, I just want her to be on screen. So I'll play around with this a little bit. We might do like some kind of little quick couple second long text screen at the front that says Holly Hula Hoop or something like that, and then we transition out and there's Holly Hula Hoop there. And she waves at you and then hula hoops, and then it says the end at the end. So we'll dress this up a little bit to make it work better. So because I'm gonna have, I know I'm gonna bring in some sort of title at the front. I'm gonna go ahead and make a new composition here real quick, and I'm gonna call it Holly Hula Title, and I'm gonna make this 5 seconds long. So this is going to be our title page, and I'm just going to type in something really quick, and then we can design it later. So I'm just going to have this as kind of a placeholder. So Holly, I'm going to do separate text, hula hoop. Oh, that's on the same text layer. Hoop. So we've got Holly Hula Hoop. I'm going to go ahead and just scale these a little bit and position them so that I have a placeholder for Holly Hula Hoop. Oh, I like that. That's kind of fun. Holly Hula Hoop. There we go. Very good. Okay, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to grab this color real quick. So I'm going to use the info tab real quick to find out what color her hair is. I'm also going to set this to 8-bit while we work. It'll render faster, and I can do colors really quick and easy. So 220, 118, 28. So I would just want to make this text match her hair. That was 220, 118, 28. Click OK. I'm going to copy this hex code down here to make this easy. And I'm going to make my text all that color.
I'm still having issues with the overlay.
The overlap?
Overlap.
All right. It seems like, make sure you do like open the extent up a little bit so it extends out. So the extent options are up at the top, up here, Connor. When you click on the puppet pin overlap, make sure you have the extent spread out, and that will help a little bit. Because it looks like the extent kind of like fades off towards the edges, so whatever you're overlapping, you kind of want to make sure you have enough overlap pins in there and extension so that you get good solid overlaps. I'm just going to use colors from Holly Hula Hoop's dress and outfit to kind of make my background up. Let's go with the magenta. on her hair. 168,081. I'm just going to make a new layer solid in the back. 168,081. Click OK. Boy, that's fun to look at. Throw a gradient ramp on that and just do a blend with original to kind of really freak people out. Oh, wow. It is so fun to look at. It hurts. Make it stop hurting.
Oh my god.
I'm just going to add some drop shadows in here, and we'll probably come back and do a little bit more work in terms of design on our Holly Hula Hoop. Text. I just want something in there that kind of says there's text here. And we're going to take that text layer and throw it in over the top of this. So we've got a 5-second title, then it's going to wipe out, and we'll see Holly Hula Hoop. We'll create a background for her and all that good stuff. Make it look all pretty. So Holly Hula Hoop's animation is going to start pretty much right here when we transition in. I'm going to do a 1-second transition, so I'm going to have her animation start just a little bit after she comes on screen. Okay. So
I hate this so much.
why?
I already hate this.
Cause the overlap stuff's not working?
No, I got it to work. I'm just because I didn't get it working. I'm like 5 steps behind you guys.
It's all good, dude. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things you might have to like start over a couple times to get it right. So just be patient with it, and give it the time that it needs so that you can get it right. And here's what I did, Connor, in terms of my overlay puppet pins, or my overlap puppet pins. I have 4 of them on her dress, and they're all extended out pretty far.
I have 2.
Yeah, so I have like 2, and you probably want to put them closer to the edges of whatever you're overlapping. So you just want to make sure you have good extension on whatever you're trying to overlap with to make sure that it overlaps correctly. And you probably want to do both the hand and the dress just to make sure that they come out right. Yeah, Riley, go ahead.
On the homework, can we use different layers for different body parts and puppet tier those? Parts?
Yeah, absolutely. You can use puppet pin however you want. Like Ethan is really good at making walk cycles. So one of the things that you could do with a walk cycle is you could take a leg and then, go to the Googles and grab a walk cycle reference, right? So you could grab a walk cycle reference that has like some good repeated, like this is perfect right here. Contact, low, passing, high, contact. So you could come in with your leg and you could take your puppet pins and do just some straight keyframing, right? Where you could set your leg, one frame's like this, the next frame's like this, the next frame's like this, and then it would animate all in between for you. So you can use puppet pin to animate individual legs, and then you could take that leg and plop it on your character and parent it and use some tricks like that to make this work better. Absolutely, Riley. That's totally fair game. Yeah, like this would be it'd be really cool if anybody does a walk cycle. There's a lot of really good walk cycle references in here where you can see how the walk cycle would look, and you could go in with your puppet pin and just pin your legs so that they look like that, and will animate smoothly between all those different walks. So yeah, I wholeheartedly, if you want to try something like that, it doesn't need to necessarily even be a fully fleshed out perfect project. You could just say, Todd, I really wanted to just try to make a walk cycle with the puppet pin tool, and do 2 legs, puppet pin it together on a character, and have the character walking in place. Totally cool. Or have it walk across the screen, whatever you want. So however you guys want to kind of challenge yourself with the puppet pin tool, go nuts. And do what you feel works well for your character. Okay, back to it. All right, so like I said, I want my little puppet pin girl to kind of bring her hand out, wave, put her hand back behind, have the hula hoop kind of fly in, and then she starts hula-ing the hula hoop. So let's go ahead and animate this. All right, so like I said, the way the puppet pin tool works is you kind of pick a pin that you want to move around, and then you use the command key to animate it. So you'll notice right now that if I move this pin moved, I must have keyframed this somehow. So where did it dump that keyframe? Okay, that's fine. All right, so now whenever I want to do anything with the pins, I can go ahead and grab a pin and start moving this pin around and hold down the command key, and it will record all of my animation from wherever the current time indicator is sitting. So if you can come in and you can kind of refine pieces wherever you want. So I'm going to start kind of at the beginning here. I'm going to hit command, and then I'm going to just bring her hand out, have it wave back and forth a couple times, and then bring it back and set it back where it was. Cool? All right, so here we go. So I have the command key held. I'm going to go ahead and grab my puppet pin tool and set it back. There we go. And it recorded all of that motion. And then I can go ahead and I can look at the pins. So you can see right here is where it laid down all the keyframes. And it happened pretty quickly here too. So it happens over the course of about a second and a half. So let's look at this in terms of timing and kind of see how it feels. So it's a little bit funky. There's a key in there somewhere where that elbow, where when I'm bringing it back, her arm kind of turns into an S shape. So I probably want to see if I can either eliminate keys there. See, and I don't know why. I got to figure out the starch tool, because the starch tool should be making that stuff hold still. Ooh, okay, hold on a second. Density. I bet it's density. Is it density? No, that's not it. Let's go to the puppet starch tool. Expansion and density, same thing. Show me the mesh, sucker. Set the density down to like. It doesn't show me anything on the mesh though. Oh, see, this is weird. It's weird, bro. Oh yeah, that's super weird. Let's not do that.
Whoa!
I did, you did.
What did you do?
I expanded
The
my
power
mesh
of Christ compels you.
and freaked it all out. Okay, so I want to try something real quick since we're here. So I'm gonna just save this real fast, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do a save as. And I'm gonna call this one _L for legacy. Save that, and then I'm gonna delete this puppet, and I'm gonna grab my little girl puppet one more time. I'm just gonna try this one more time in the legacy mode. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit expansion 12, density 12. Actually, our expansion was 5. So I'm just gonna try this real quick to see what happens. All right, and we're gonna go in here and go legacy, and it's gonna say it could not generate mesh, having a complex shape, increasing triangle, blah blah blah. Okay. Let's go back to our puppet pin tool and click on triangles, 120. Here we go. How about 500? Okay, so pin there, pin there, pin here, pin here, pin here. Let's go 700. Alright, so in the legacy version, I just want to see if the starch tool works the way that I'm thinking it should work. Yeah, see, they give you an amount to starch and an extent. And if you extend this, you can see the area that's being starched. So if you guys want to, okay, everybody look up at my screen. If you guys want to use a legacy mode for starching, I don't know what's going on with the starch tool, the way that it's set up. Like, it doesn't give me any of these options for the starch pins. So I can't really see what my starch pins are doing or what they're actually holding still. Like if we look at my other version of this, you can see the arm just totally bends into an S, which shouldn't happen if something is starched. So I'm gonna set up the arm again, kind of like what I did with the other pin, and we're gonna see if we can get this starch tool to work a little bit better in the legacy version. So I want a pin there and a pin on the hand, and then if I want something to hold still on the arm, I should be able to put a starch pin there and a starch pin here, and you can see what is starched. So now if I grab my pin tool, it still wants to kind of bend everything. All right, I'm gonna go back to the starch tool real quick and just kind of play around with these a little. So I'm gonna pull the extent in on both of these. Okay, and you can see that the starch amount is set to 15%. And you can move the starch pins around. Yeah, it's really weird the way that the new one works. I'm not very satisfied with it. Puppet pin tool. I'm gonna give this like a boatload of triangles. There we go, that's better. All right, go back to my starch tool here real quick. So you can see the starch tool is a little bit more, so it works a little better here. So this is kind of what I was driving at. So right now the amount is set to 15% starch. If I set this to say like 85% and then go in and move my arm, it's going to totally change the way that this moves. So now we have quite a bit of starch. We've got like a bendy area there, a bendy area in the hand, and a bendy area at the shoulder. If I go back to my pin tool and move these things, you can see that that arm only bends where I want it to bend, at the elbow. It'll stretch, but it won't turn into an S like it did in the advanced version or whatever the new version is. I'm not really super pumped about how that works. So if you want to use the legacy version for starching stuff, like if starch is not working for you, feel free to pop over to legacy. Just make sure you crank up your triangle count nice and high so that your mesh works well. Oh, 1500 is the max. All right, is that it? Yep, 1500 is the max amount of triangles. And then starching looks like it'll work a lot better. So I'm gonna just save this real quick and go back to what I was working on before. And we'll keep on kind of cruising here and making things go.
How do you get to the legacy version?
So you go into the Puppet, and then there's a Puppet Engine, Advanced Legacy. You know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to pause this. So we just looked at some YouTubes and found out that the starch tool in the advanced version is all automatic, so you have no refined control of the starch tool anymore, which is just brilliant, Adobe, brilliant. Why did you do that? That was really stupid. I want her arm not to bend like an S like that, and I can't do that with no control over the starch tools. So, way to go. All right, so we got her waving and putting her hand back behind her back, and now we want to kind of like let her hula hoop, right? So I'm gonna move this over just a little bit in terms of where I am in my timeline. That looks great. And then I'm gonna go ahead and start animating the hula part of this hula hoop. Doot doot doot. Have her hula right here, and it's got a billion mesh points on it, so it's probably set, the mesh is set a lot higher than it needs to be. We're gonna deal though. I'm gonna set my resolution down a little bit so that I can manipulate my character a little bit better. Cool. So the nice thing about this is the hula motion is pretty good. I think we can probably animate the hula hoop animation pretty easily by just using this one pin, and then we can probably go in and add a little bit of additional, like have her head move around a little bit, and make it kind of fun the way that she moves. Maybe have her feet move just a little bit too, and go in and add a little bit of character to each little individual section of our puppet until she looks like she's hula hooping proper. All right, so let's go ahead and kind of add some hula hoop animation to this. So her arm is done. I'm going to scoot over a second or two, just to give me a little bit of time. Okay, perfect. So she puts her hand behind her back right here. We go leave a little bit of space. So I'm going to go at like 7 seconds, 12 frames, and then I'm going to go ahead and puppet pin, animate. Why can I not see? There we go. So this is the pin that I'm going to grab right here, and I'm going to grab it with the command key, and I'm just going to have her hula hoop for like 5-10 seconds, something like that. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Do 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 and then she's done. So we'll see what happens with the animation here. If I went too crazy, I was thinking maybe I could have the hula hoop like split into a million pieces at the end or something like that, and that would be the end of the animation. So let's give this a playback here and see what this is going to look like. Pause this for you people at home. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm pretty happy with the way she's hula hooping. She's waved. She's got her waist shaking all over the place, which is good and kind of hula hoopish. And I'm going to turn on my hula hoop and see if there's any way that I can drive the hula hoop animation with the animation from my puppet pin. So that being said, I need to go into the position on the hoop itself, turn the hoop on. And you know the way the hula hooping works, so right here where she puts her hand down, we'll probably have the hula hoop kind of come in. There's some fun stuff that we could do here, like we could take the puppet pin tool and kind of like squish her head, so like the hula hoop goes around her head or around her hair or whatever. So there's some other fun stuff that we could do here. I'm gonna animate this hula hoop kind of coming in. That's where she starts, so I'm just going to hit U so I can see where my puppet pin animation starts, which is right there. So I'm going to have the hula hoop kind of fly in, and as soon as she starts hula hooping, let's see, we'll go like this. So I'm just going to grab the move tool and kind of create a little hoop animation. So the hula hoop's coming down from the top of the screen. And I'll have it ease in. Don't forget to use your keyframe interpolation, folks. Comes in. And we could probably do some stuff with the hands too. We could maybe animate the hands so that when the hula hoop comes in, she like grabs the hula hoop and then does the like thing with her hands. Maybe she sticks her hands out like this while she's hula hooping. We can play around with this a little bit more and just kind of fine tune it a little bit. So hula hoop comes down. So if that's the case, and I want to puppet pin her hands kind of coming in to meet, I can set some keyframes for that. So I'm going to take this hand right here that's moving and kind of set a keyframe so that there's a good in between here. So right now, her hand moves over, sits, and it's going to sit until this keyframe hits. And then, as this hula hoop kind of settles right there, I want her hand to come back out and grab it. Something like that. There we go. So you can custom key these pins too, which is really nice. You don't have to record everything. You can go in and do your own animation keyframe by keyframe if you want to do it that way, and that can work really well. So I'm going to try to do this a similar type of thing with her other hand. Click on that pin, that's pin 6. I'm going to set a keyframe for where it's at right now, and then as this hula hoop kind of sits, I'm going to grab my pin and have the hand come out. I'm going to give it a little bit of a curve here with the handles. So I showed you guys how to do that a little bit.
Trying to kill me?
There we go. Good. And then as this hula hoop kind of takes off, let's see, it's going to go like this. So I'm going to have her hands do kind of a little flicky thing. So I'm going to go ahead and add another in-between keyframe right here and another in-between keyframe right here so that the hands kind of sit for a second. And then as she moves her hip, I'm just going to kind of have the hands do like a brushing motion with the hula hoop. So the hula hoop's moving. Let's see, so the hula hoop would be, if it's on this hip right here, trying to think about how the hula hoop motion would work. So if this were a real hula hoop, it would look something like this. When her hip's there, and then, I better keyframe this too real quick. So motion kind of starts right now. Jay, I'm teaching class, buddy. Okay. So hands come out and grab the hula hoop, and then she starts. So I want to kind of do, I think I need to go this way, because the hip has got to be on the hula hoop wherever it's being shoved. Alright, let's see. So if that's the case, let's see. So I think the hands need to flip this direction. I think. We'll try, we'll see what happens. So right here, there's a little flip of the hand puppets. Move this in between keyframes to the left just a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and scoot this to the right, and I'm going to have my hands kind of flip this direction and this direction. And I'm also going to animate my overlap as well here. So if I go into the overlap tool and I click on this guy, does it actually allow me to animate that overlap at all? I think Legacy allowed you to do that too. Mesh, expansion and density, but no options for overlap. Great. Oh wait, there it is. Yay, options for overlap. Wonderful. Okay, so I got overlap 1. I'm going to go ahead and add a keyframe for in front. And I'm going to just back that keyframe up a little bit to where the hands are behind. That's good. When they come back out and grab the hula hoop, that's when I'm going to keyframe my overlap, and then I'm going to scoot forward, and when the hands flick, I want that overlap to be back in front again. So I'm going to set this to, I'm going to set it to like 95% in front. And now the hand is in front. Great. Okay, so you can animate overlap, which is awesome. So I'm going back to the puppet pin tool. I need to do a little bit of overlap work on the body right there because she's like reaching into her own chest, pulling out her own heart again. So I kind of got my hands to go where I want them to go. I might have have her hand do that little flick like I got there, and then have that other hand kind of move up and over to kind of a similar position to where her other hand is. So let's see, that is this pin right here. And if I just hit the command key, I can just go. I'm gonna just add a little bit of animation in there. Groovy. This needs to be a little quicker. I just kind of want to like delete out these keyframes in the middle and have this happen faster. I love the bendy S arm. That's super fun. It's like a snake. I'm just gonna roll with it. All right, cool. So I've got my hula hoop. I think what I want to do is start playing with the hula hoop animation itself. So I got the hands out there. They're moving around fun. I might just add some additional hand animation to this other hand. So I'm just gonna go ahead and like have this hand dance around a little bit. Just adding a little bit of animation to it for fun, so that the hands are kind of moving around while the hula hoop's flying around. It's looking pretty good. Cool. Okay, so let's see if we can't drive the hula hoop animation with the hip animation that we already have. So the puppet pins generate their own position information, which is really helpful for doing anything you might want to do in terms of like generating additional data or using that information to control the hula hoop. So let's see if we can't make this work. I know that if I were hula hooping, so the tricky thing about this is that the hula hoop's kind of got to be on the opposite part of the body. I'm going to see what happens if I hand keyframe this real quick. So she moves her hip this way, which means the hula hoop, after she flicks her hands like so, caught there, and then I'm going to go ahead and set a position keyframe for the hula hoop here. And then she flicks her hands, and then it flies over. I think the hand flick is wrong, by the way. So I'm going to have the hula hoop kind of fly over this direction. All right, cool. So one there. And then whenever I see that hip kind of come out, I'm just going to move the hula hoop. This is funny. Oh boy. This hula hoop is going to be flying like 1,000,000 miles an hour.
If you move it along Z space as well,
It'll look more hula
go, like,
hoopy.
around, yeah. Like if you move it along with like motion of her hips.
I'm just going to hand animate this and see what happens, because I'm interested in what happens here if I just hand animate this. Okay, move this over here. And I'm kind of not being super tough on where this is at. Yeah, so what I might do here, Connor, is like set this up so that like wherever these in-betweens are, so like right here,
Yeah.
we take in Y space and pull it forward.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because when you rotate it.
Right, and then so wherever there's like open in-betweens, right here, we pull it fore and aft in Z space, right? So we go like so, and then same
that's
here,
So beautiful.
go right here, and then same here. Let's see, where was I before?
You're welcome.
Forward, and then we go backwards, and then forward again. And then backward again, somewhere in here. Oops, that's not the right space. Let's bring this back forward again. Yeah, that's actually looking really nice, the way that that works. It's fun. that's actually working really well. So I think I don't know if we could drive this correctly with the actual animation from the hips, just because of the nature of the hula hoop. It's moving in the opposite direction that the hips are moving in. So you could probably do like an expression where you add like a times -1 and it basically flips the data. So it would flip it so it's opposite, but my guess is you'd probably have to go in and hand animate this anyhow. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep playing with this, I think. So this is forward, and then this would be back. And I'm kind of letting the hula hoop float up and down a little bit organically, just in terms of how I'm moving it in position, so that it feels a little less like it's just moving back and forth, and there's a little like up and down organicness to it. Okay, this one is pretty short in terms of where it's at. So just keep stepping through until your hula hoop girl is hula hooping like crazy. Space. Fun. And then I'm going to go ahead and just play this back and see what it looks like. It's pretty good so far. Hello, I'm Hula Holly. Hula hoopa 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 hula. That actually works really well.
Oh my god.
I think the hula flick needs to be a little quicker. But it'll be kind of fun to kind of get the speed going the right way, and then when make the hula hoop fly into little pieces or whatever. The look on her face is really funny though. She's got that same grin on her face the whole time.
Let me sound like we could change it.
And what is with that stupid grin? So let's see if we can animate two pins together. So like, let's say I wanted to work on like her knees.
Make him do this. Raise the roof.
Raise the roof, yo.
No, that's
Come on, puppet pin. That is not what I want to do here. I want this one and this one. I think we can animate two hoops or two pins at the same time. So I'm gonna do this really subtly. Damn it! Stupid starch pins. They shouldn't even be visible right now. All right, I'm gonna get right in here on these pins, and then this is gonna look crazy. Whatever. Let's see what this looks like. It's kind of fun. It works. Yep, so just some little additional motions in terms of different spots. It might be fun. Let's see if we can make her... Let's add a couple pins to her hair and see if we can't make her like face and head squish down as this hula hoop comes in. So I'm going to go here. I got my pins. I'm going to go ahead and set a couple more. Let's see what happens if we... Oh, fun. Cool.
Yeah, what I did was setting those points at the very ends of our pigtails, like the tips.
Oh, over
Like
here?
down there, yeah. Like the very end.
I definitely
I guess
don't,
that works too.
don't want to move them together. I just want to figure out... Okay, cool. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of figure out where this hula hoop is and see if I can't like keyframe this. So I'm on 49, I'm going to keyframe here, and then as this hula hoop kind of comes in around, I'm going to pull one pigtail away in, and I'm going to do the same thing with the other pigtail. And then as it passes, I'll have these pigtails fly back out. Maybe a little bit of and then we'll have them settle back down into kind of their original positions. This will happen much quicker as soon as the It almost looks like they're reacting to the hula hoop instead of interacting with the hula hoop. Like I almost need to go like this, scoot these over so that, oh, that's a little too late. Scoot it back an inch or two. Here we go. So these two pins, I kind of want these pigtails to like fly way out when the hula hoop comes back, and then kind of come down a little bit, and then settle into place. Do a little ease in here. Oops. Ease in. I think I'm going to easy ease all of these. Out those. Let's just see what this little hula hoop hair thing looks like. Yeah, that's nice.
Head go boing.
What was that?
Head go boing.
Yeah, head goes boing. We'll turn on some motion blur here. See if this will help this whole movement out a little bit, and it does. I think we can puppet, or we can turn on motion blur for her too, and it will blur all the bits that are moving, I think. Oh, now it's getting crazy. Getting crazy up in here. Better save it. Now it doesn't know what to do with the motion blur.
You screwed up.
Oh, there. Yeah, it does motion blur the character. Excellent. That's great.
Oh. Render it and let's see it move.
If it ever, oh, you know what? I think I have my motion blur sample set super duper high right now too. Yeah, they're set up there quite a ways. Set this down to like 16 instead of 64. Try rendering this now. Still's taking a long time to render this at 1/3 resolution. So just be aware that your project might take a little more time to render this time around, especially if you do things like motion blur. Say again, Scott.
2 hours later.
2 hours later, we can see the motion of the hula hoop.
DeAndre, repeating a joke doesn't make it any funnier.
Fun. Yeah, that's very cartoony. I dig it. Neat. I'm going to shut off my motion blur here and just kind of watch this to see how I'm liking how this is moving. Yeah, this is moving nicely. Okay, so obviously I would go through and finish out all this animation to finish the hula hooping. I probably would smooth out the hip motion a little bit because there's some times where it just kind of gets erratic and weird. I do love the idea of the hula hoop just exploding. Alright, so that is pretty much the gist of puppet pinning. Let's learn some other fun stuff while we're at it. So if I wanted to make my hula hoop explode, I could use the CC Shatter tool, which I think I've showed you, or I've talked to you guys about before, right? Shatter is one of these kind of like cool tools that's built into After Effects that you can do some neat stuff with. So why don't we pretend that we're going to use Shatter to create the transition for our Holly hula hoop right here. So we're going to have Holly hula hoop shatter out of the way and reveal Holly behind the title. So let's go ahead and play around a little bit with Shatter. So go ahead into Effects and Presets and type in Shatter, and you'll see Simulation Shatter. And this is an 8-bit plugin, just FYI. So it's not going to work if you're trying to render in 16-bit. Okay, so when you drop Shatter on a layer, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get this mesh looking thing. I'm going to just solo the layer that I'm working on so that it's not trying to render Holly hula hoop behind at the same time. So you get this kind of unrendered look at the Shatter tool. And generally the way that I work with the Shatter tool is I like to come in here and I like to tell it to where is it wireframe process 4. So right up here in the view tool at the top, I'm going to set this to rendered so that I can see what is actually being rendered. Back in the day when computers weren't very powerful and you were trying to render Shatter, it would take a lot of render cycles to make this happen, but now you don't really need to worry too much about only viewing the forces unless you have like millions and millions of little Shatter bits, which we won't have. So let's just kind of walk through the tool here real quick. So we've got the view, which changes basically so that we can see our wireframe and our forces, which can be handy. Like if you need to see the scale of your force or where its position is, you can use these views to see where those forces are hanging out. I'm going to set this back to rendered. The shape allows you to change the shape of the actual pieces. And the one that I use the most is glass. And I like to set the repetitions up quite a bit. So like the more repetitions you have, the better this stuff is going to look, at least for glass. You know, if you want it to really look glass-like, having a lot of repetitions is going to make it look nicer. You can also change the direction, the extrusion depth. So this is kind of a faux 3D. A faux 3D plugin as well. You can see that it's given me a nice little extrusion here around the edges. And then once we actually see this being shattered, which is right here, you can see that all my shattered pieces have some nice extrusion depth to them. So you can set this to whatever depth you want it to be to kind of give you the most realism possible. From really skinny, thin, like if you're doing glass, to, you know, nice and thick, like 0.5 gives us a nice thickness. And then you get all these pieces, nice pieces when the thing shatters. If you want this to blur, does it work with motion blur? I don't think it does. If you want this to motion blur, you can use the effect Force Motion Blur, CC Force Motion Blur, and then you can flop it on your effect and it'll give it a nice motion blur effect. Okay, so manipulating shatter can be a little difficult. So whenever you drop shatter on a layer, what's going to happen is it's going to give you just the generic shatter straight away. And the way it generally works is it starts at the beginning of the composition and then just shatters right away and comes to a settle. So if you want it to shatter on cue when you want it to shatter, that takes a little bit of doing. So what we need to do is we need to go in and we need to start controlling all the parameters inside of the shatter to make it shatter when we want it to. So I kind of have, like I said, I wanted to set this up as like a 1 second transition. So I'm gonna go ahead and get in here and start playing around with some of the forces. So force 1 and force 2 are the two forces that you can use on your shatter. And I believe right now, yep, only force 1 is on. You can see force 2 has a radius of 0. So the way that shatter kind of works is it works off of these radiuses, right? So like the larger the radius is, you're going to see the shatter happening there. So if you want, you know, your shatter to start and stop on cue, this is the force you need to start to kind of play with. You want these forces to basically turn on and turn off when you want your object to shatter. So what I'm going to do to make this kind of shatter when I want it to is I'm going to set this radius to 0, and now you can see that we've got no shatter animation on anything in this shatter. So I'm going to go back and set a keyframe for the radius there, and the way that you can make things shatter quickly is by, say, moving over like 1 keyframe and setting that force depth to like 0.5 or big enough so that it shatters your object. And obviously this is going way too slow for the transition time that we want to use. I want this to shatter out in like 1 second. So I want the shatter to basically be finished by the time this goes away. So the way that you can do that is you can start playing with the strength and the depth of your forces. So you can control those over time as well. I think if you increase the strength, it pushes the shatter parts harder when the force activates upon the kind of wireframe in the background. And then I believe, is there gravity in here? Yes, there is. Gradient. So you got rotation speed, you've got some randomness, viscosity, and gravity. So one thing that I can do, and this is kind of cool, like you can see that you can get a lot of really interesting different effects by playing around with the forces. So right now I've set the strength of this shatter way down, right, to 0.02, I think, or 0.20. And you can see it just kind of like breaks a little bit and then falls, right? So you can create some really neat effects with the strength. So if you increase the strength, it's going to increase the how hard the glass is basically hit, or the shatter is hit from the back. And you can do negative strength too. I believe if you set this to like -5, all the pieces basically shatter inward, right? And then explode out. So there's some kind of cool stuff that you can do with the strengths and radiuses here to make your shader do what you want it to do. Now, in terms of the speed of this thing, I obviously need this to go much quicker. So I'm going to set the gravity up like twice as high. Set this to 6. All the pieces will fall off faster. And this looks like one of these things where I'm just going to have to fine tune it a little bit to get what I want. So if I move my forces over just a hair, and we maybe start hula hoop Holly a little bit earlier. Boom. And that's clear. And then I can probably fade out or just expand the shatter so that it's a little larger. Huh. Bless you.
Ow, that hurt.
Well,
I'm dying of this.
don't hurt yourself.
I can't. Sneeze is always
That is true.
Okay, so let's say I wanted to say create like a bullet shatter effect, right? On this, like let's say I wanted to have I wanted pieces of this to shatter in different places, right? So let's say I want the O's to fly out of Hula Hoop Holly, right? And I want it to be like bullets hitting it or whatever. So the other kind of neat thing that you can do is you can set your forces and strengths and animate them so that you can have them hit different parts at different times. So right now we have this large force that shatters the whole thing out. So like, let's take this force and decrease the radius. So I'm going to unanimate this here real quick, and I'm going to increase the radius just a little bit. So I'm going to set this to like 0.8. No, 0.8. 0.8. Not huge. Let's look at our forces here so we can see how big this thing is. Okay, I want this to be nice and small, and so 0.1. Yeah, let's set this, and then you can tell it where you want it to go too. So if I go in here and I go to rendered, and I take this force and move it up here to the 0 or to the O, and then I animate this. You can see that it just takes out the bit that I have the force set to, which is really fun. So like if you wanted to create bullet effects, or you want to put the forces or have something explode in certain spots, all of that is doable. And then the way that you get this to happen when you want it to happen is you just set the radius to whatever you want. So I'm going to set a keyframe for radius on force 1, and then let's say I want that force to hit at 20 frames. So I'd bring this over to 20 frames, and then I just hit command left arrow, and I'm going to set this radius back to 0. So it's going to go boom, it's going to hit there. And then let's say I wanted the force to change positions after that, right? I want it to go back down to one of these other O's. Then what we can do is we can animate the position. So I have the position set now, I have the radius set now. So I hit it right there. Then I want it to come down here and hit one of these the other O's. So I can take the position and change it to the center of the O. I do have to make sure that the radius is set to 0 and the strength is set to 0 as well. So we're going to start animating the strength. I'm going to set the strength back to 0, and then this should move across the screen. You can see the stuff just kind of starts going away. Do we still? Yeah, we still have a little bit of radius here, so we need to make sure that our radius is set to 0. So this radius goes from that's cool. We need the radius to go from 0 to 0.1. So let's go in here and set a keyframe for our radius, 0 to 0.1, and then back to 0. Right after that. Then we can drag it across. So our position is now changed. So if we look at our wireframe and forces, we can see that the the center of the force is moved to the center of the O, and now we can basically repeat what we've done before. So we can go back into our force 1. I'm going to go ahead and look at rendered mode again. And we're going to set our radiuses. So I'm going to go ahead and plop a keyframe down for the radius, pop over a keyframe, set the radius back to 0.1, and then back to 0 again. And then we're going to do the same thing for the strength. So the strength we're going to set up as well. So we're going to set a keyframe for 0 strength, and then when it hops up to 0.1, we're going to set our strength to 5, and then when we go over one more frame, weird. Looks like I need to set the strength higher than that to get it to do what I want it to do. 10. Pow. There we go. And maybe set the radius just a little larger as well. 0.2. There we go. Cool. Now you can see we've got multiple shatters in multiple locations happening on our background just because of the way we control the forces. So this is a really cool tool to use on all kinds of different ways. So if I was going to make the hula hoop explode, this is exactly what I would use. I would just use shatter and have it blow into 1,000,000 bits. I've used this a whole bunch on different projects. On one particular project I had it was like a ninja thing, and I had a ninja with a big sword, and I basically made the shatter forces wherever the sword was would swipe across the screen, and so everything would just shatter out of the way of the sword. That was really cool. You can use it for like bullet hits, you can use it for all kinds of things. It's really fun to change up the different patterns too and just try different patterns to see what they look like. Oh, let's see. Herringbone or hexagons. That one's kind of neat looking. You can use custom shatter maps. That's probably pretty fun. And then playing around with the different... Ooh, you've got shatter thresholds too, which you can use, which is fun. There's different textures that you can lay in. So this is a pretty robust little plugin for creating some interesting and dynamic effects really quickly. So yeah, that one's fun. Trying to think if there's anything else that I really want to show you guys tonight. Do you guys have any questions on anything right now?